A massive thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now there are plenty of awesome sporty retro bikes on the market in 2022. For a start, you've got the Triumph Speed Twin with its thumping Bonneville parallel twin. There's the Kawasaki Z900 RS with its more revvy inline 4 and beautiful Z1 inspired styling. And then of course, the BMW R9T with its flat boxer twin that gives it a distinctive sound and feel. But what about Yamaha? Well, their XSR900 has been around for a few years now, and so for 2022, it gets a massive update. There are improvements to the engine, chassis, and tech, all of which are carried over from its hyper-modern naked equivalent, the much-loved MT09. But is it enough to cement its place at the top of the sporty retro tree? Well, I was lucky enough to go on the European press launch to find out. After a good day's riding on some incredible Tuscan roads, I had a decent idea of where this bike excels versus the competition and a couple of areas that might be improved. So let's start with the good stuff, and the main one for me is the awesome inline triple CP3 engine. They've updated it for this model and the MT09 to meet Euro 5 emissions regulations, but they also added 4 horsepower more, and that takes the peak up to nearly 120 horses, so that makes it easily the most powerful retro on the market. The thing is, fun on the road isn't necessarily always all about peak power, but it does make absolutely bags of torque, and it has such a great mid-range. But it's not just about raw performance, it also feels refined and usable and well put together. Throttle delivery is nice and smooth while still retaining plenty of aggression, and there are 4 riding modes with distinct characters, so there should be something for everyone. The clutch has a nice light action when you do need to use it, but those occasions are few and far between because you've got one of the best quick shifters I've tried in recent memory. It works just as well around town between first, second and third as it does when you're really giving it the beans and banging through the gears. For me, the CP3 is the best thing about this bike, and I can't really fault it. It's also a really nice sounding engine. If you enjoy the sound of a triple, you'll enjoy this. It's got the same twin exit exhaust design as the MT09, so an equal amount of sound in each ear when you're on the road, and the airbox sounds pretty great as well, but I'll just demonstrate that exhaust. I was also super impressed with the handling of this bike, and it should come as no surprise with it getting all those updates from the MT09. So a new, lighter, stiffer Delta Box frame, spin-forged wheels that combined save 700 grams of unsprung rotating mass, and a new Brembo radial master cylinder to give it a nice crisp feel at the brake lever. But they have made some adaptations specifically for the XSR, and the big one is that they've lengthened the swing arm by 55mm, which is really quite significant. The result is that it gets most of the sporty handling of the MT, and it really does turn and stop exceptionally well, but also it's just that little bit less twitchy owing to the extra length, and I think that makes it a little more pleasant to ride. Good tyres in the form of Bridgestone S22's, plenty powerful 4-pot radially mounted front calipers, and decent adjustable suspension from KYB all round off a fun yet friendly chassis. Tech is another massive strong point for this bike. It's far more fully featured than anything else in the retro market. So there's a 3.5-inch TFT display now, not massive compared to what you might see on other bikes, but still plenty enough space to show the important information, and it's well laid out and easy to use, and you've got a good design for the switchgear as well. Now through the dash you can choose from those 4 power modes that I mentioned earlier, with 1 being the most aggressive, down to 4 that limits power and is essentially the rain mode. For me, mode 2 offered the best balance. It still delivers on the grim factor, but it's a touch easier to be smooth with your throttle inputs than the highly aggressive mode 1. There are also some settings for the rider aids, and with a new inertial measurement unit that feeds lean data back into the bike, you now get cornering sensitive traction control and ABS. There's slide control as well, wheelie control, cruise control, LED lighting, and so it really does have a lot of good techie features. Whether that's a good thing or not really depends on what sort of bike you like. I think for some people it might ruin the sort of semi-retro experience. But if you're someone who likes tech and likes performance and just want a sort of more old school looking package than the MT09, then this certainly fits the bill. Now onto some of the features of this bike which might be a little more contentious. I'll start with the looks, and I say that as someone who generally likes the vibe of this new model. There are plenty of 70s style bikes out there on the market already, and so I think it's nice to see Yamaha contributing something a little different with more of a late 80s or early 90s theme. I know that it's not going to be to everyone's taste, and I do also appreciate that the bottom half of the bike is basically just the MT09. But the top half and the front end work nicely for me, and I especially like it in this blue, yellow and gold paint job, which really did pop under the glorious sunny skies of Italy. There is one thing though that I'm not entirely sold on, and I'll give you like 2 seconds to guess. It's the seat. Visually, it's just taken me quite a bit of getting used to. It certainly is bulky at the back end. I don't know if it will kind of mature well over the next 6 months or year. It certainly looks better in the flesh, and I admire, you know, some bold styling cues that make it a bit different, but I can't help but feel it'd look a little better with something more slender. It's not just the looks of it that have changed though. In fact, the XSR gets a completely different subframe to the MT09, and it sits quite a bit lower, 25mm to be precise, which means the seat height now comes in at 810. Yamaha say they've done this to make the bike feel a little more accessible, and also to mimic the bikes of that late 80s era that generally did sit lower at the back than the more tail-up bikes of the current day. Certainly shorter riders will appreciate it, but if you're on the tall side or you just prefer a slightly more lofty perch, then the MT09 might still be the one to go for. And then the last thing with the seat is it is pretty firm, and I don't mind a firm saddle, but I will say after a couple of hours I was ready for a little break. Same for the passenger, it's firm on the back here as well. I don't think that's going to be the best passenger seat. And the other thing is there's nothing in the accessories catalogue. No low seat, no comfort seat, no high seat. So yeah, that's probably the only thing that I would say would potentially be a sticking point if I was thinking about buying this bike. But I'd either be hoping the Yamaha do add something to the accessories catalogue, or I'd probably just take it to someone who can recover the seat and add a bit of foam or gel at the front here, and that would just lift it a bit and give it a touch more comfort. So yes, some little qualms here and there, but do they dampen my enthusiasm for the general riding experience of this bike? Not really, no. The engine, the handling and now the tech are all unmatched in the retro segment, especially when you consider the price. It's about $1,000 cheaper than both the Speed Twin and the Z900 RS, and it's $3,000 less than an R9T. Now you could rightly argue that it's the least authentic retro. It's not bringing a great deal of old school character, and it doesn't have the attention to detail of some of the others. But if you're just after a little bit of a nod to the past and you want the most bang for your buck in terms of spec and tech, then without doubt you better go and give this bike a try. As always, I'd love to know which bike you go for down in the comments below. And while you're doing that, I'll leave you with a message from today's video sponsor, Squarespace. It's a super easy place to make a website with absolutely loads of beautiful looking templates to choose from. But beneath the surface, there's much more to it. You can grow a whole community with their powerful features for creating gated members only content, as well as email communications and useful audience insight. You can also start a blog with full threaded comments for your audience. You can automatically cross-post from your social media profiles, and there are loads of third-party extensions to help with starting an online store, like inventory management, global shipping, and more. So simply head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and then when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/MOTOBOB and you'll save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. So once again, a massive thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video.